First up, let's get you the latest from the Israel-Hamas war. Israel says it has now further expanded its ground operations in Gaza. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has rejected the idea that an international force could be responsible for security in the Gaza Strip after the war gets over, saying that it's only the Israel Defense Forces that should retain control for disarmament of Gaza. Take a listen.
עזה חייבת להיות מפורזת. וכדי שעזה תהיה מפורזת, יש רק כוח אחד שיכול לדאוג לפירוז הזה. והכוח הזה הוא צבא ההגנה לישראל. שום כוח בינלאומי לא יכול להיות אחראי לכך.
The IDF says that it has been operating in Hamas strongholds in the areas of Jabalia, Shujaiya and Khan Younis, where it has destroyed militant infrastructure and also eliminated Hamas militants. As the Israeli offensive expands to southern Gaza, the city of Khan Younis is particularly witnessing huge devastation. The IDF described the past day as the most intense day of combat in 5 weeks of ground operations against Hamas. What appeared to be the biggest ground assault in Gaza since the truce broke down. Israel says that its troops, who were backed by warplanes, had reached the heart of Khan Younis and also surrounded the city. Take a listen.
בחלוף 60 ימים מפרוץ הלחימה, כוחותינו מחתרים את מרחב ח'אן יונס בדרום הרצועה. אנחנו ממשיכים במקביל להעמיק את ההישג גם בצפון הרצועה.
Meanwhile, the Palestinian Islamic Jihad group has released a video showing its militants fighting in Khan Younis. Militants can be seen shooting guns and operating rocket launchers in the video. The offensive also continues in northern Gaza. The IDF has released a video showing Hamas's continued exploitation of civilian infrastructure in Gaza City. It shows how the Al-Shati camp in the city is being used by the militants. The IDF says schools and civilian buildings are used to launch rockets, store weapons, and carry out attacks against Israel.
תמים לחלוטין, שבפועל זאת עמדה לניהול לחימה. היה פה ממש חמ"ל בתוך המשרד של המנהלת, שבתוכו מנהלים לחימה ומפעילים פה את כל המערכת. ופה, ממש פה, במקום הזה, נמצאו אמצעי לחימה רבים, ועוד תשתיות של חמאס, שממש עזרו להם להכין את כל המערכת שדיברתי עליה מקודם.
And amid intense fighting, Hamas has ruled out negotiations, clearly saying that no further prisoner or hostage exchange will take place until Israeli strikes stop.
ونجدد هنا التأكيد أنه لا تفاوض ولا تبادل إلا بوقف العدوان على شعبنا وقطاع غزة الصامد الصابر. ونحمل هنا نتنياهو كامل المسؤولية عن حياة الأسرى والمحتجزين الصهاينة بسبب تعطيله استكمال صفقة التبادل واستئنافه للعدوان على غزة.
Well, Israel has now revised the number of hostages that are held captive by Hamas to 138. Previously, Israeli officials had said that 137 hostages were still inside the Gaza Strip, and this included 20 women and 2 children. Israel has not provided the details concerning the 138th confirmed hostage or how Israeli authorities were able to verify the status. Well, on the other hand, the U.S. has taken a rare action against Israeli settlers. It is now imposing visa bans on people involved in violence in West Bank. The officials say that this has been done after several appeals for Israel to do more in a bid to prevent violence by the Jewish settlers. The visa restriction policy targets individuals believed to have been involved in undermining peace, security or stability in the West Bank, either by committing violent acts or actions that restrict civilians' access to essential services and basic necessities.
Today, as President Biden recently warned, the United States is taking action to address this escalating violence in the West Bank by implementing a new visa restriction policy under Section 212A3C of the Immigration and Nationality Act.
For more on this, we're now being joined by correspondent Jody Cohen, who's joining us live from the Hostage Square in Tel Aviv. Hi, Jody. I want to first start by asking you that what can you tell us about the meeting between the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the hostage family that took place last night?
Hi, Rahisha. So first, I just want to explain where I am. As you said, this is called Hostages Square, and it's the place where the relatives of the hostages still being held in Gaza are coming to speak to people. And as you can see behind me, there's many school children here who've come today to hear from them. Now, the War Cabinet met with some of the freed hostages last night and the families of 138 hostages. That number's gone up by one, reportedly because of forensic evidence showing that one person who was considered missing, they now categorically know that that person has been taken into Gaza. Now, this was an emotional meeting. The families reportedly demanded that the return of the hostages be the government's #1 priority, even over the war effort. Now, the health ministry on Tuesday revealed that Hamas drugged some of the released hostages to make them seem calm and happy as they were being released. And Ronen Sur, the director of the Families Forum, he said that he's heard from freed female hostages about the difficult things that took place in the tunnels, including sexual abuse. Now, freed hostage Yelena Trufanov, whose son Sasha is still being held hostage, she said that the conditions that the men are being held in are even worse than for the women. And Sharon Cuneo said that she watched hostages die next to her and said that Israel needs to bring the hostages home now and cannot wait another month. Now, security officials have said that it may take a month to put enough pressure on Hamas to force them back to the truce. Some at the meeting reportedly called on the Prime Minister to resign. Netanyahu suggested that the Israel Defense Forces are doing what they can to find out information about where the hostages are being held and also to put military and diplomatic pressure on Hamas. He also reminded the families that it was Hamas that ended the hostage deal, not Israel. Now, Sharon Sharabi, whose two brothers are being still held in Gaza, she said that towards the end of the meeting, ministers promised that going forwards, all decisions will be made with consideration that the hostages are in immediate life-threatening danger. So it's understandably a very emotive meeting last night.
Right, Judy, apart from the precarious hostage situation, talk to us about the latest on that's intensifying fighting and also a US media report that suggests that the main fighting could be over by the end of January. What are you gauging at the moment?
Right, so we have heard that. We know that the Israel Defense Forces are currently surrounding Khan Yunis in southern Gaza, and they've said that this is the most intensive fighting since the war began. IDF Chief Herzi Halevi has said that Hamas is the target and that they're working to avoid harm to those uninvolved as much as possible. Remember, the IDF has printed and published online this map designating different zones. So it appears that the IDF strategy is that the fighting zones will evolve and that they're going to be alerting people as to specifically where the fighting will take place and also how to evacuate those areas to get to safety. Now, Israel is holding Hamas responsible for any civilians that have been killed, saying that they're using human shields, they're fighting in civilian areas, that they started this war, and that Israel also needs to ensure that Hamas can't carry out another 7th of October massacre, as it said that it wants to do. But as you said, this US media report has suggested that the US officials believe that the main fighting in southern Gaza, the main operations, could potentially be over by the end of January. We know that Prime Minister Netanyahu has suggested that the only way for this war to end quickly is to use crushing force, and has said that the world would need to understand that if it wants the war to be over as fast as possible.
Right, Jody, thanks very much for joining us in WION and sharing your insights with us on the story.